for most people, the midway point of your fantasy season, it's time to take a look at how you drafted compared to who's actually been first-round material. Hey, how are you? Jason Horowitz with you on the Chase Fantasy Football Series exclusively here on CBS SportsLine. It's roster trends, the moves being made here on the website, and what to do about it. Senior fantasy writer Jamey Eisenberg will join me in just a bit, but let's hit those waiver wires and see who you're picking them up, and let's hit them hard. And if you haven't made any addition all year, you're probably 1 in 5. So hit those waiver wires. 6 more teams on buys this week. A couple of quarterbacks that may be available. Bruce Gradkowski and Ben Roethlisberger. Believe it or not, Big Ben was owned in just 68% of leagues on CBS SportsLine heading into Week 6, so he's available. San Diego wideout Eric Parker. He's leading the Chargers in receptions and yards. He just hasn't gotten in the end zone. And then the tight end Alex Smith. Not the Alex Smith in San Francisco, but the tight end for Tampa Bay. He's gotten in the end zone the last 2 weeks. All right, we welcome in senior fantasy writer Jamey Eisenberg via satellite from Miami. And Jamey, you know, those are the guys on the wire. Those are the guys that are going to be picked up the most as far as your waiver wire column that you've written. That's on CBS SportsLine. Sure. But what about the Clayton boys at receiver? Mark and Mike, you say stay away from both of them.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, Mark Clayton got, he had a really huge game number-wise, but if you watch the game, both touchdowns that he caught were off deflections. They weren't even thrown at him. So he's certainly a guy that's not being thrown to a lot. He's been a big disappointment this year, considering that Steve McNair came on as a quarterback. You're expecting a lot of good things from him, and it just hasn't materialized. Michael Clayton is another guy who is expected to do a lot of good things. They had the injury situation with Chris Sims. Gradkowski came in. He threw a touchdown that, if you're a Bengals fan or not, might dispute that it was a catch or not. But he's another guy that's just been somewhat of a disappointment. I don't think both those guys have a lot of fantasy value going forward just because of the offenses that they play in and the quarterbacks and the teams that they're going to face. All
right, well, speaking about Michael Clayton, how about the 2 guys that are being picked up on the waiver wire, those being Bruce Gradkowski and Alex Smith?
Now, Gradkowski is certainly someone who's been a surprise. I mean, the Tampa Bay offense was awful when Chris Sims got hurt, and Gradkowski's come in. He's shown a lot of poise. The biggest thing that's probably helped them out is the Bucs offensive line has been healthy. Cadillac Williams is starting to get healthy with his back situation, so he's running the ball, which is really helping the situation. And Joey Galloway has certainly become now a really hot wide receiver. Another guy that I like a lot, just because of the way Gradkowski is looking for him, is Alex Smith. He hasn't put up a huge yards game yet, but he is catching he has 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Gradkowski's looking for him in the red zone, and given the fact that we are still in the middle of all these bye weeks with 6 teams on a bye, everybody needs tight end help. So Alex Smith is a guy that could help you out during this time. Yeah,
tight ends have really been a struggle for a lot of people this season. All right, Jamey, well, we're talking about your roster and who to add. We're heading into Week 7, and obviously people, they can't change how they drafted, but for the most part, if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, most likely 8 through 11, anywhere from there, 8, 9, 10, or 11 running backs, they went in the first round. Maybe Peyton Manning, T.O., perhaps the exceptions. Well, guess what? Here's so far the top 10 fantasy players in a regular league that gives you a point for each catch, and the regular point system for each 10 yards receiving and rushing, 25 for passing. Maybe 3 or 4 of the first-round picks are on this list. LaDainian Tomlinson, Steven Jackson, Peyton Manning, depending on if Brian Westbrook was picked in the first round. Surprises, Kevin Jones, Lavernius Coles, and hey, Rex Grossman, he was on this list until Monday night. Jamey, you don't see a lot of those running backs that were picked in the first round. People can't change how they drafted, but Jamey, the point here is you can't hang on to guys just because of where you drafted them. It's okay to make trades, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Shaun Alexander was obviously a guy that was drafted high. He's got an injury situation. I'm sure people were trying to sell him off and see what they could get for him, knowing he's going to come back later on. Larry Johnson's certainly been a disappointment from where he was picked up. But you're right. I mean, there are certainly guys who have done well that weren't drafted high and probably weren't drafted at all in terms of a guy like Grossman, maybe someone like a Frank Gore in small leagues. So there are certainly guys that you have to really pay attention to, and you really have to do a good job drafting, and this is where it's starting to pay off at this time of the season.
Guys like Marcus Colston as well also picked up off the waiver wire. All right, let's talk defenses real quickly, Jamey. It can be tough because in the 6 weeks, 5 different defenses have led fantasy leagues in scoring. The Saints, the Chiefs, the Vikings, mixed in there with the Ravens and the Steelers. It all depends who scores touchdowns. Now, here are the 3 top scoring defenses and special team units on CBS SportsLine. Chicago number 1, no surprise there. Baltimore number 2, Philly number 3. But preseason, the Bears were ranked 1 in CBS SportsLine, but Baltimore was 15th. The Eagles were 18th. Now, Denver has the best scoring defense in the NFL, but they're 20th when it comes to fantasy points. Can you win a fantasy league by just platooning defenses?
You absolutely can. I mean, if you missed out on one of the elite defenses, and some people like to draft defenses early, I'm not a big proponent of that, but there are certain defenses that you should play the matchups. I mean, Denver was a defense that probably wasn't drafted high, and look how they've done. They've certainly been able to limit their opponent's scoring, which helps in leagues where you get points, for keeping your opponent under 10. And then you want to look for defenses that are playing against quarterbacks that have a high propensity for turning the ball over, throwing interceptions, teams that fumble a lot. A good return guy, because special teams points count. And so if you have a guy like Reggie Bush, the Saints defense certainly wasn't drafted high, but look last week, Reggie Bush returns a punt for a touchdown. So you want to look for defenses based on how they're doing, how they started out. I mean, again, New Orleans is one. Philadelphia is another one that, they've given up a lot of points, but they sacked the quarterback so much, so you get points that way. So it all depends on a week-to-week basis. And I don't know if you can necessarily, have one of the highest scoring defenses doing it this way, but you certainly can, on a week-to-week basis, maybe get lucky with a defense here or there.
All right, for more from Jamey on what you should be doing heading into Week 7, be sure to read Jamey and Dave Richard exclusively here on CBS SportsLine. We'll talk to you real soon, Jamey.
You bet. Have a good one.
All right, so that'll do it for this edition of Roster Trends exclusively here on CBS SportsLine. But don't forget, coming your way Thursday, October 19th, it's Stardom Sit 'em, who Jamey says are the best bets to play heading into Week 7. Until then, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care.